On June 30, 2025, international diplomacy was rocked by a major announcement that sent shockwaves through political and economic circles worldwide. Former President Donald Trump declared a sudden suspension of all informal economic talks with Canada, responding forcefully to Ottawa's introduction of a new digital services tax targeting major tech companies. Trump denounced the tax as a direct attack on American innovation and entrepreneurship, warning that if Canada proceeded, there would be swift and painful consequences for bilateral relations and economic cooperation. The announcement immediately rattled financial markets, sending stocks tumbling and raising fears about the stability of North American trade, which has long been a pillar of economic growth for both nations. Unlike previous disputes over traditional goods like steel or aluminum, this conflict strikes at the digital economy, the very heart of modern commerce, innovation, and cross-border business. The suspension signals a deep and serious rift, putting President Joe Biden in a difficult position as he tries to manage a dispute inflamed by his predecessor, while also balancing domestic and international pressures. Trump's timing was no accident. By disrupting planned talks, he has challenged the very foundation of US-Canada dialogue and forced both sides to reconsider their strategies. The move puts intense pressure on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government, forcing them to weigh the risks of backing down against the possibility of a damaging trade war with their largest and most important trading partner. In the immediate aftermath, the Canadian dollar dipped noticeably, and stocks in key sectors, especially technology and manufacturing, showed clear signs of nervousness and volatility. Businesses on both sides of the border now face deep uncertainty as the threat to integrated supply chains and cross-border investments looms larger than ever before. The big question remains, is this just a high-stakes negotiating tactic, or are we witnessing the beginning of a drawn-out and potentially damaging economic conflict between two close allies? The answer will not only shape the future of US-Canada relations, but could also set a precedent for how global digital trade is governed in the years to come. As the world watches closely, the next steps taken by both governments will be critical in determining the direction of international economic cooperation and digital commerce. At the center of the dispute is Bill C-96, Canada's Digital Services Tax Act. The bill imposes a 3% tax on Canadian revenues of large digital companies, mainly US tech giants like Google, Meta, and Amazon. It's retroactive to 2022, angering both the companies and US officials. Ottawa argues the tax is about fairness. Tech giants profit from Canadian users, but pay little in local taxes. The law aims to modernize Canada's tax system for the digital age and level the playing field for Canadian businesses. Critics say the tax is discriminatory and will likely be passed on to Canadian consumers and businesses, potentially stifling innovation. The measure is unilateral, breaking from the OECD's push for a global tax framework. Canada had paused its plans for the OECD process, but with little progress and rising domestic pressure, Trudeau's government decided to act. This move has set the stage for a direct confrontation with the US. The stakes for Canada's digital economy and its global reputation are high. From Washington's viewpoint, Bill C-96 is seen as more than just a policy disagreement. It's viewed as a direct protectionist attack on American industry and economic interests. U.S. trade officials argue that the proposed tax unfairly targets American companies, calling it discriminatory and a clear violation of established international trade norms. In response, the U.S. Trade Representative has swiftly launched a formal investigation, signaling Washington's readiness to retaliate with strong countermeasures if necessary. Tariffs on Canadian goods, such as maple syrup, dairy products, and even furniture, are being considered, all carefully chosen to maximize political and economic pressure on Ottawa. The U.S. strategy is clear: force Canada to reconsider by hoping that affected Canadian industries will lobby their own government to back down, amplifying internal pressure. But the concerns go beyond just economics. U.S. officials are deeply worried about a growing global trend of digital taxes that seem to single out American tech giants, potentially undermining the OECD's efforts to create a unified multilateral approach. If countries start acting alone, it could quickly spiral into a chaotic web of double taxation, overlapping regulations, and escalating trade disputes that would hurt businesses on both sides of the border. The issue has sparked rare bipartisan outrage in Congress, giving the Biden administration a strong and unified mandate to take decisive action. The message from Washington is unmistakable: abandon the digital tax, or be prepared to face swift and significant consequences. At this point, the U.S. is showing little appetite for compromise, making it clear that it's willing to escalate the dispute if necessary. The stakes are not just about economics or trade, but about who gets to set the global rules for digital taxation in the years ahead. As a result, the pressure on Canada is intense and only growing, with every move closely scrutinized. The world is watching closely to see how Washington will respond, knowing that the outcome could shape the future of international digital trade. For Canada, this is about more than revenue. It's about digital sovereignty. Trudeau's government insists Canada must set its own rules and ensure all companies contribute fairly. The tax is also seen as a way to support Canadian culture and media, which risk being overshadowed by foreign tech giants. Ottawa argues it waited for the OECD process but can't delay while billions go untaxed. Public support is strong. Canadians want big tech to pay more. For Trudeau, defending the tax is a matter of national pride and political survival. The economic fallout from a trade dispute could be severe, especially for Canada, which relies heavily on stable cross-border commerce to fuel its economy and support millions of jobs. The U.S. is Canada's top trading partner. Any disruption in this relationship would hit hard, sending shockwaves through both economies and affecting countless businesses on both sides of the border. Retaliatory tariffs would make Canadian goods pricier in the U.S., threatening jobs in key sectors like dairy, where farmers already operate on thin margins and depend on American markets for survival. Maple syrup, furniture, and steel are also at risk, as these industries rely on exports and could see demand plummet if tariffs are imposed. These industries are vital to rural economies, providing stable employment and supporting local communities, while also being deeply integrated into North American supply chains that keep goods moving efficiently. A trade war could disrupt logistics, delay shipments, and cause widespread uncertainty for Canadian workers and businesses, making it harder for companies to plan for the future. The U.S. would also feel pain, especially in border states and among American exporters who depend on Canadian customers for a significant share of their sales. Counter tariffs could hit U.S. farmers and manufacturers, raising prices for consumers and squeezing profit margins for businesses already facing global competition. The tech sector is in the crossfire. U.S. giants may cut investment, restrict access, or pass costs to Canadians, raising prices for digital services and limiting innovation. While aimed at foreign firms, the tax's burden could ultimately fall on Canadian consumers and businesses, who may see higher costs and fewer choices. The risks are real and immediate for both economies, with financial markets reacting quickly to any sign of escalating tensions. Every move could trigger a cascade of negative effects, setting off a chain reaction that impacts jobs, investment, and economic growth across the continent. The stakes for North American prosperity are enormous, as the region's economic future depends on cooperation and open trade. Both sides have much to lose, making it crucial to find solutions that protect jobs, industries, and the shared prosperity of Canada and the U.S. The dispute is likely to spill into the legal arena. If the U.S. imposes tariffs, Canada will challenge them at the World Trade Organization, arguing they're illegal under international law. The U.S. could counter that Canada's digital tax violates trade agreements like the USMCA, triggering a formal dispute panel. Legal battles would be complex and unpredictable, with both sides risking defeat. Beyond trade, the conflict could strain defense and security ties. Canada and the U.S. are close allies in NORAD and NATO. A prolonged economic fight could erode trust and complicate cooperation on security. Other countries are watching closely. If Canada prevails, more nations may pursue digital taxes. If the U.S. wins, others may hesitate. The outcome will set a precedent for global digital taxation. The stakes go far beyond North America. This is a test case for the future of tech regulation and international alliances. The world is watching who will blink first. Prime Minister Trudeau faces strong public support for taxing big tech, but also pressure from industries fearing U.S. retaliation. He must defend Canadian sovereignty without triggering a damaging trade war. Trudeau's legacy may hinge on balancing tax fairness with economic stability. In Washington, President Biden faces bipartisan demands to defend U.S. companies. He can't appear weak, especially with Trump pushing for a hard line. Yet Biden also wants to rebuild alliances strained during the Trump era. A trade war with Canada would undermine that goal. The administration prefers a diplomatic solution through the OECD, but Trump's rhetoric forces a tougher stance. Both leaders are walking a political tightrope. Their choices will shape the US-Canada relationship for years. The stakes are personal and historic. Several outcomes are possible. The best case, both sides pause hostilities and commit to finalizing the OECD global tax deal. This would let each claim victory and avoid economic damage. A limited trade skirmish is possible, with targeted tariffs and ongoing negotiations. The worst case, a full-blown trade war, with broad tariffs, supply chain chaos, and lasting damage to the US-Canada alliance. The world is watching to see if diplomacy or confrontation will prevail. The outcome will shape global digital tax rules for years to come. This is more than a neighborhood spat. It's a battle over the future of international trade. The stakes are global, and the consequences will echo for decades. The next move could change the rules of the digital economy forever.